The Vark had come from the stars with a force that no one had expected, their ships gliding silently through the void like shadowy phantoms, their technology far beyond anything the Federation had ever seen. They were perfect in their strategy, their battle computers calculating every possible scenario with cold precision, and every move was met with perfect countermeasures. Their systems were designed to learn and adapt. They had been the scourge of countless worlds, devouring civilizations like locusts, leaving only ashes behind. The United Federation of Planets had stood as the last line of defense against the encroaching darkness, but it was clear the battle was slipping away. Their fleets were crumbling in the face of the Vark's impenetrable tactics. The soldiers were fighting, but they lacked the tools to counter an enemy that knew every move before it happened. Each attempt to rally was met with an iron fist, and soon the morale of the Federation was in tatters. They had lost hope in their technology, their strategies, their future. In the high command of the Federation, President Katrine Hanley sat surrounded by advisors and military leaders, their faces grim as they watched another Vark victory unfold on the holographic maps before them. Each battle lost seemed to echo the next in an endless cycle of defeat. As a star system fell one by one, the remnants of the Federation fleet were being pushed back into a small corner of the galaxy, and the Vark seemed unstoppable. It was then that an unlikely voice cut through the silence. Commander Lana Voss, a human leader of a relatively small but decorated crew, stepped forward in front of the council. Her reputation was known, but she had always been something of a wild card. She wasn't a brilliant tactician like others, nor was she known for her perfect discipline, but her crew had a reputation for something else: unpredictability. She had once led a mission to the Zithan Belt that no one thought was possible. They had survived against impossible odds, and their report to command was filled with odd humor and absurd anecdotes of their success. While others had been compiling rigid data reports, her crew had been telling jokes. It had been the weirdest victory ever recorded, and no one really understood why it had worked. Now, standing in front of the council, Voss presented a strange idea. "We have something the Vark don't understand," she said, her voice steady, but tinged with an unusual enthusiasm. "They don't understand us. They don't understand our unpredictability, our humor. They're designed to fight against cold logic and precision. But we fight with something else, something they can't predict." The room fell quiet for a moment as the council exchanged uncertain glances. "You're suggesting we fight them with jokes?" Someone finally spoke up incredulously. Voss didn't flinch. "Yes, we fight them with chaos," she said simply. "We fight them with everything they can't calculate. We fight them with ourselves, with the things they can't see coming." Humor, laughter, even our flaws are weapons against them, because they can't process them. They don't know how to deal with people like us. President Hanley stared at her for a long time, her mind racing with the possibilities. But then something unexpected happened. A small spark of hope flickered in her eyes. "Prepare your fleet, Commander," she said at last. "You've got one shot." Voss nodded and turned to leave, knowing that humanity's last chance might not lie in their guns or ships, but in the one thing the Vark could never predict, the one thing that was uniquely human. The first shot of the war might not be a weapon at all. It might just be laughter. The fleet of the United Federation assembled in the darkest reaches of space, their ships scattered like stars, lost in a cold expanse. Humanity's last hope was now riding on the shoulders of Commander Lana Voss and her crew aboard the U.S. Laughter, a ship that had been chosen for a strange reason. It wasn't the most advanced or the most well-equipped. It wasn't even the largest. It was a ship built for eccentricity, built for chaos. The crew aboard were a motley collection of the most unpredictable soldiers, scientists, and officers in the Federation. Commander Voss stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars, her face reflecting a calmness that belied the sheer absurdity of the mission ahead. She had no illusions about the gravity of their situation. But if there was one thing she knew, it was that humans were not predictable, and that was their greatest weapon. The Vark didn't stand a chance against humanity's chaos. They couldn't account for the way humans thought, the way they acted, or more importantly, how they reacted to danger. There was no logic to it, no formula to calculate what a human would do next, and that was what Voss was counting on. When the battle began, the Vark would be prepared for an enemy that followed the rules of war, an enemy that made logical decisions, that adhered to strategy and procedure. But humanity wasn't that enemy. The crew of the U.S. at Laughter had trained for this moment, but in a way no one had ever trained for war. Before, they weren't trained to fight with their guns or with their tactics. They were trained to embrace the chaos that was inherent to being human. Every officer, every soldier had been chosen for their ability to think outside the box, to make the impossible seem possible, to turn the most hopeless situations into something strangely hilarious. And it started in the briefing room, where the first battle plan was drawn up. Voss walked into the room with a grin on her face, and the first words out of her mouth were, "All right, team, here's the plan. We're going to make them so confused that they'll think they're fighting a clown car." The room fell silent. No one was sure if she was joking or being serious. But then the oddball crew started laughing. A few chuckles turned into full-blown laughter, and soon the room was alive with an energy none of them had felt before. It wasn't the usual tension of preparing for battle. It was the pure, unbridled release of stress that only humor could bring. Voss continued, "We're going to use everything. They can't predict. The Vark can't process humor. They can't process absurdity. And the more absurd we get, the more they'll struggle to keep up." She pointed to the holographic display of the enemy fleet. "We'll make them think we're a circus act, give them enough confusion to make them question everything they know about tactics." Her crew nodded, some still unsure, but all willing to try whatever it took. They knew the stakes were high, and yet somehow the absurdity of it all brought a new sense of clarity. This wasn't about precision. This wasn't about rules. It was about survival. And somehow, in the most bizarre way imaginable, this plan felt like the best shot they had. The U.S. Laughter powered up its engines and prepared to jump into the heart of the battle, the crew ready to play their part in the most ridiculous and most brilliant strategy the galaxy had ever seen. Their ship wasn't a war machine. It was a weapon of pure chaos and unpredictability, and it was humanity's only hope. As the U.S. Laughter moved toward the enemy fleet, a strange thing happened. The crew began to laugh, not just nervously but genuinely. It was a strange kind of confidence that only humans seemed capable of finding in the darkest moments. And with each passing moment, their laughter echoed across the comms to the rest of the Federation fleet. Their message was simple: we're not going to win this with strength or logic. We're going to win it with the one thing the Vark could never understand: laughter. The U.S. Laughter drifted silently into the battle zone, its crew ready for the most absurd confrontation in history. The Federation fleet was already in position, holding steady against the relentless onslaught of the Vark. The Vark ships, sleek and ominous, hung in space like shadows ready to pounce, their battle computers silently calculating every potential move. They expected the humans to be predictable, desperate, easy to crush. But the U.S. Laughter had other plans. As the first Vark warship locked onto their position, Commander Voss turned to her crew with a grin. "Remember, nothing is sacred. Make them question everything." The bridge crew nodded, some nervously, others already grinning at the madness of it all. Voss signaled to Lieutenant Jax, the ship's communications officer. "It's time. Let's start with the basics. Keep it simple." Jax opened a channel to the entire Federation fleet, his voice echoing across the comms. "Attention, all ships. This is the U.S. Laughter. We're here to save the galaxy, one joke at a time." At first, there was silence. Then a burst of laughter came from the other ships, followed by confusion. Some Federation officers were still unsure how this could work, but the absurdity was taking hold. The Vark didn't know what to make of it. Voss then issued the first order of the battle. "All hands prepare for operation." Whoopee cushion. The ship lurched forward as the crew began executing the first part of their plan, sending their vessel into a series of erratic maneuvers that defied all known flight patterns. The Vark warships, expecting tactical precision, were taken aback by the bizarre motion. It was like a dance in zero gravity. Sharp turns, sudden stops, and loop-de-loops for no reason at all. The Vark's battle computers, designed to calculate every angle, couldn't handle the randomness. Their systems stuttered, unable to track the erratic ship movements. Whoopee cushion wasn't just a joke. It was a mockery of everything the Vark had been built to do. They were systems of cold logic and strict protocol. The humans were, well, a circus. Then, as the Vark ships attempted to recalibrate their weapons, the U.S. Laughter did something entirely unexpected. It blasted a loud, obnoxious noise across the comms, an air horn blaring over the battlefield. It was the sound of an entire crew trying to get under their enemy's skin, trying to make them feel, if only for a moment, that everything they knew was wrong. The Vark reacted with confusion, not knowing how to process the sound or the unorthodox movements of the Federation ship. It was as if they had been hit with a shockwave of dissonance. They expected order, control, and human soldiers who would fight according to established tactics. Instead, they got a fleet of unpredictable beings who made war seem more like a chaotic, ridiculous game. On board the U.S. Laughter, the crew's laughter became infectious. Each member of the bridge crew seemed to take the Vark's confusion as a sign that they were winning. Ensign Patel, the ship's navigator, grinned as they executed a particularly wild series of evasive maneuvers, throwing off the Vark ships with ease. "This is ridiculous," he said through the laughter, "but it's working." Commander Voss, standing at the helm, let out a loud booming laugh. "That's the point. They can't predict us, because we don't even predict ourselves." The Federation fleet, emboldened by the unexpected success, followed suit. The first Vark ship, a destroyer, attempted to lock onto the U.S. Laughter with a heavy barrage, but its targeting system failed to lock on. The U.S. Laughter swerved at an odd angle, then dropped straight down like a comet. The Vark fire missed by miles. The crew's laughter rang out again, this time even more uncontrollable, as they reveled in the absurdity. The Vark commanders stared at their battle computers, baffled. Their systems attempted to adapt to the randomness, but it was like trying to catch a cloud. The Vark had faced entire fleets before, but nothing like this. They had underestimated one thing: the power of laughter. In the chaos, the Federation's fleet began to land some blows of their own. Ships once on the verge of retreating were now fighting with renewed vigor, laughing with every impossible dodge and strange counterattack. The Vark might have been a well-oiled machine, but humanity had something they couldn't replicate: spontaneity, unpredictability, and the ability to make something truly absurd work in their favor. The chaos that had erupted in the Vark fleet was unlike anything they had encountered. Their battle computers, designed to run thousands of simulations per second, couldn't keep up with the madness of human behavior. It was like fighting an enemy who didn't obey the laws of logic or reason, and that, above all else, terrified them. As the U.S. Laughter spun through the stars, its crew laughing in the face of danger, the Vark's perfect calculations began to unravel. On the bridge of the U.S. Laughter, Commander Voss watched with a strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief. "They're losing it," she muttered, her eyes glued to the tactical display. "Look at them. Perfect machines, but they can't predict a single thing." Lieutenant Jax leaned over from his station, his eyes wide with amusement. The look on their faces, if they had faces. "I think we're breaking their systems." The Vark ships had begun to stagger. The once formidable war machines that had cut through the Federation fleet like a scythe through wheat were now hesitating, their movements sluggish and uncertain. It was as if the Vark computers were running hundreds of calculations at once, trying to account for every possible variable, but coming up empty. Every move the humans made was wrong, too erratic, too ridiculous to track. The U.S. Laughter weaved through a barrage of laser fire, swerving left and right, flipping upside down for no reason at all. The crew's laughter echoed across the comms as they executed a maneuver no one had thought possible, a full 180-degree flip followed by a complete stop in midair, just to make the Vark ships overshoot their targeting. Jack snorted, "I think we just pulled off a space pirouette." Ensign Patel, the ship's navigator, wiped a tear from his eye, still laughing. "I've never been so proud of my random decision-making in my life." The Vark were growing increasingly desperate. Their tactics were based on order, strategy, and flawless execution. Their entire military doctrine was built around the premise that nothing could go wrong. But humanity had turned everything upside down. The Varth's battle computers couldn't reconcile what they were seeing. The erratic patterns, the non sequiturs, the laughter, it was throwing them off. They couldn't predict the future of a species that couldn't even predict itself. The Varth command ships attempted to compensate by issuing new orders, reprogramming their systems in real time, trying to counter the bizarre human strategy. But they were too late. The USS Laughter had already launched a barrage of missiles, each one aimed at a different target, each missile following a completely different trajectory. The missiles scattered in 1,000 directions, zigzagging across the battlefield, and some of them struck their intended targets purely by accident. Did we just win that by throwing missiles randomly? Patil asked, his voice still incredulous. Commander Voss leaned back in her seat, watching the spectacle unfold. It's working, isn't it? From the corner of the bridge, Ensign Reed, the communications officer, glanced up from his console. You're not going to believe this, he said, his voice barely containing his astonishment. The Varth are requesting a pause in hostilities. A ceasefire. A ceasefire? Voss blinked. What for? There. Reed paused as he checked the feed again. They're confused. They want to know why we're laughing. Laughter rippled through the bridge again, this time more out of disbelief than amusement. The crew was starting to realize that their strategy had worked beyond even their wildest expectations. The Varth had so thoroughly relied on logic and precision that even the smallest deviation from their algorithm had sent them into a spiral of uncertainty. Good, Voss said, her grin widening. Let them ask all the questions they want. Let them think they're dealing with a bunch of clowns. We're going to keep them on their toes. The Varth ships hovered, momentarily stalled in their operations. The moment of uncertainty had been seized, and the Federation fleet followed suit. As the humans continued their erratic maneuvers, the Varth seemed paralyzed by the one thing they couldn't account for: human unpredictability. What they failed to understand was that uncertainty was not a weakness. It was a strength. And in this battle, humanity was about to prove just how powerful it could be. On the bridge of the U.S. Laughter, Commander Voss took a deep breath and chuckled softly. I think we finally got their attention. The U.S. Laughter floated in the midst of the battlefield, its crew laughing like maniacs as their chaotic strategy began to unravel the Varth's perfect order. For the first time, the Varth battle computers were struggling. No, failing. Their systems were bogged down by the unpredictability of human tactics, a force they could not compute or account for. On the Varth flagship, Commander Kavor, one of the highest-ranking officers of the invasion fleet, sat frozen in his command chair, staring at the screens in disbelief. His engineers scrambled, trying to reprogram the targeting systems to focus on the erratic Federation vessel. But every time they tried to lock on, the U.S. Laughter shifted, swerving, dodging, and moving in ways no military strategist would ever have predicted. They're not following any pattern, Kavor muttered, his voice a mix of frustration and growing fear. We've encountered chaos before, but this is something else. The Varth had calculated and planned for every possible outcome in their war with humanity, but one thing had been left out of their algorithms. Humans didn't play by the rules. The U.S. Laughter, despite being a much smaller and less advanced ship, was dancing circles around their fleet, turning their own technology against them. For all their cold logic, for all their millions of years of evolutionary advantage, the Varth had never anticipated that their greatest enemy would be this unpredictable. Meanwhile, on the U.S. Laughter, Commander Voss and her crew reveled in their strange success. The absurdity of it all fueled their energy. In the battle's chaos, they had found a kind of clarity, an understanding that nothing they did needed to make sense as long as it worked. If the Varth were determined to destroy the Federation with precision and cold calculations, then humanity would fight with humor, randomness, and joy. Voss glanced at the tactical screen. The Varth ships were still unsure, some of them even stalling in place, unsure whether to engage or retreat. This was the moment they had been waiting for. "Lieutenant Jax," Voss said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Get the whole fleet on the comms. We need them to know what's happening here. We need them to see that we can win without precision." Jax raised an eyebrow. "You want to tell them we're winning because we're making it up as we go?" Voss grinned. "Exactly." With a few quick taps, Jax broadcasted a message to the Federation fleet, a message that would set the tone for the rest of the battle. "Attention, all ships. This is Commander Voss of the U.S. at Laughter. You're seeing what's happening here. It's chaos, it's madness, and it's working. We're not going to beat them with strength or precision. We're going to beat them by being exactly what they don't expect. Keep your systems unpredictable. Keep your tactics unconventional. And most importantly, keep laughing. We've got this." Across the Federation fleet, there was an immediate surge in morale. Crews who had been on the verge of retreat suddenly began to laugh, their voices crackling across the comms in the same chaotic symphony that had come to define their battle. The Federation ships, now buoyed by the success of the U.S. at Laughter, started to adapt the same unpredictable tactics, weaving in and out of the Vark's targeting zones, shooting in random bursts that kept the Vark guessing. On the Vark flagship, Vor slammed his fist down on the armrest of his chair, his voice rising in frustration. Why aren't they falling into line? Why are they fighting like this? The answer was simple. Humans didn't fight like machines. They didn't fight by rules, by patterns, or by precision. They fought by instinct, by wit, by surprise. The Vark had underestimated them, assuming that humanity's unpredictability would be a disadvantage. What they hadn't realized was that unpredictability was the one thing that could undo the might of the Vark Empire. The Federation fleet surged forward with a new purpose. Every ship became a wild card, a wild force in a chaotic dance that sent the Vark reeling. What had started as an impossible battle had now turned into a full-on rout, and the Vark were struggling to make sense of it. As the first wave of Vark ships began to retreat, the crew of the U.S. at Laughter erupted in cheers, but Commander Voss held up a hand, her expression serious. "This battle isn't over," she said, "but this is only the beginning. We've shown them what we're capable of. Now we need to show the entire galaxy." The U.S. at Laughter hung in space, its systems running at full capacity, its crew at the peak of chaotic brilliance. As the Vark ships hesitated and retreated, the Federation fleet surged forward, emboldened by their success. Commander Voss knew they had the momentum now, but she also understood that momentum was a fleeting thing, especially when dealing with an enemy like the Vark. The battle was far from over, and the Vark were no strangers to resilience. They might be confused, but that didn't mean they were defeated. "All right, crew," Voss said, standing tall on the bridge. "We've done the impossible. Now let's do something even more ridiculous." Her words echoed through the comms, and the crew erupted into laughter once again. This wasn't just about the absurd maneuvers or the unexpected tactics. It was about something deeper, the power of laughter as a weapon. In the face of cold logic, it had become humanity's greatest tool. Voss looked around at her crew, each of them now exuding a sense of confidence they hadn't felt before. Ensign Patel was practically glowing, his fingers flying over the navigational controls with newfound energy. Lieutenant Jax, the communications officer, was grinning from ear to ear, sending out jumbled, bizarre messages across the comms to keep the Vark second-guessing. The entire crew had come alive, not from the promise of victory, but from the sheer joy of defying expectation. As the Vark ships began to regroup, their commanders furious but still unable to break free from the fog of uncertainty, Voss began to devise the next stage of their unpredictable campaign. The Vark couldn't anticipate what humanity would do next, and it was time to lean into that more than ever before. "Ensign Patel," Voss called, "I want you to take us straight toward that command ship. Not close enough to engage, but close enough that they'll know we're coming. We're going to give them a good old-fashioned human surprise." Patel didn't even flinch. "Aye, Commander," he said, already preparing the ship's course. Jax looked up from his station, his grin widening. "And I'm going to send them a little gift to let them know we mean business." Voss raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What kind of gift?" "Something," Jax said with a wink, "that they definitely won't see coming." The U.S. Laughter powered up its engines, heading straight toward the Varth command ship, its erratic path confusing the Varth's targeting systems yet again. The crew on the bridge shared an almost primal joy, the absurdity of their actions making them feel alive. But this time, it wasn't just about winning. It was about taking control of the narrative. The Varth thought they knew how the war would go. Structured, logical, predictable. But humanity had turned the tables. As the U.S. Laughter approached the command ship, the Varth fleet began to position themselves for a counterattack. But just as they thought they had the Federation ship in their sights, a strange signal blasted across the comms. It wasn't a weapon or a tactic. It was the sound of a crowd laughing, an echoing, wild cacophony of voices, loud and absurd. On the Varth flagship, Commander Kivor shot up from his chair in alarm. "What in the galaxy is that?" The sound was disorienting, almost maddening. It was as if the entire human race had come together and turned their collective laughter into a weapon. A barrage of pure absurdity aimed directly at the Varth's military psyche. "Why are they doing this?" Kivor demanded, his voice tight. "Why can't they just fight like anyone else?" Back on the U.S. Laughter, Jax couldn't help but laugh at the chaos unfolding on his screen. "I'd call it an audio assault, Commander." Voss smiled but didn't look away from the tactical display. "It's more than that. It's confusion, it's disruption, and it's a weapon that can't be countered." The Varth were faltering again. Their communication scrambled under the weight of the laughter, their systems overwhelmed by the random sounds that seemed to come from everywhere. It was a simple strategy, yet effective. The very nature of human humor, loud, chaotic, unpredictable, was throwing them into disarray. But Voss knew they needed more than just laughter. They needed to strike while the Varth were confused, to press the advantage they had so carefully earned. "All right, Patel," she called. "It's time for operation. Slip on the banana peel. Get us right into the heart of their fleet. Make it look like we're going to crash right into them. They'll never know what hit them." Patel grinned. Already on it. As the U.S. Laughter shot toward the Varth command ship, it veered suddenly, performing an almost impossible barrel roll at the last possible moment, narrowly avoiding a collision with a Varth destroyer. The move was so absurd, so unexpected, that the Varth didn't even know how to respond. The Federation fleet, emboldened by their success, followed suit, launching into their own unpredictable, chaotic maneuvers. The Varth were now in full retreat, unable to maintain their grip on the battlefield. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, the humans did something even more ridiculous, throwing their calculations into complete disarray. For the first time in centuries, the Varth were beginning to understand the true power of humanity. It wasn't about strength or precision. It was about making them question everything they thought they knew. The U.S. Laughter now glided effortlessly through the chaos of space, its crew fully immersed in their absurd strategy. The Varth were reeling, their once imposing fleet faltering under the constant barrage of human unpredictability. Their battle computers, designed for precision and efficiency, were now nothing more than glorified calculators trying to process a completely illogical war. Commander Voss stood at the helm, watching the Varth fleet through the main viewport, her eyes sharp despite the ridiculousness of it all. The Federation had come a long way from the beginning of this fight, outnumbered, outgunned, and seemingly outclassed by the Varth's superior technology. But now, the tables had turned. Humanity had discovered a simple truth. Unpredictability was their greatest weapon. And it was working. "Commander," Lieutenant Jax called, his voice barely containing his amusement. "We've got a major opening. The Varth are confused, and their fleet is breaking apart." I think we've got them on the ropes." Voss didn't respond immediately. She was thinking, weighing the options. The last thing they wanted to do was push too hard, too fast. They had gained the upper hand, but that didn't guarantee victory. The Vark were still dangerous, and their leadership was growing desperate. "Patel," she finally said, her voice steady, "I want you to get us in close to the Vark flagship. We're going to play a little game of chicken. Let's see if they can keep their cool when we're literally in their face." Patel grinned, already preparing the controls. "Understood, Commander. We'll make it look like they've got us cornered." Jax was already preparing the next part of their plan. "And when they think we've got no escape route, I'll send them a little message, something nice and loud." The crew exchanged knowing glances. They knew what was coming next, an all-out absurd assault on the very heart of the Vark fleet. The Vark had relied on predictability and cold precision. They had never considered that a human mind could think without boundaries, without any rules to follow. Now that very unpredictability was what would be their downfall. As the U.S. at Laughter raced toward the Vark flagship, the tension in the air was palpable. The crew held their breath as they neared their target. The Vark ships had begun to fire on them again, but the U.S. at Laughter was too fast, too erratic. The crew had perfected their absurd evasive maneuvers to the point where the Vark targeting systems couldn't lock on for more than a few seconds. Each shot that came their way missed, sailing harmlessly into empty space. "Get ready," Voss said. "We're about to show them the true meaning of chaos." With one final dramatic move, the U.S. Laughter shot forward at full speed, as if it were going to crash directly into the Vark flagship. The Vark commanders on the flagship watched in stunned silence, their weapons ready, their minds calculating how to intercept the human ship. But just before impact, the U.S. Laughter made a sudden, impossible spin, a move so wild it would have been unthinkable to any other fleet. In that split second, Jax broadcasted a new message across the comms, his voice full of mischievous glee. "Hey Vark, here's a little something for you. You didn't think we'd make it this far, did you?" Then came the sound, a burst of uncontrollable laughter, echoing through the speakers. It wasn't just the crew of the U.S. Laughter. It was a planetary-wide broadcast, a signal from every Federation ship, every soldier, every crew member. A loud, defiant roar of laughter that would reverberate across the stars. The Vark flagship systems, overloaded by the sudden assault on their sensors and communications, began to flicker. Their advanced technologies, which had once been their greatest strength, now felt like brittle glass under the force of the human onslaught. The laughter wasn't just disorienting. It was an assault on everything they had ever known. On board the flagship, Commander Kavor staggered back, clutching his head as the wave of sound surged through his ship's systems. "What is this?" he howled. "What kind of weapon is this?" But there was no answer. The laughter only intensified. It was more than just noise. It was an idea, a disruption, a chaotic force that had no equal. The Vark had underestimated the power of a species that didn't just fight with weapons, but with ideas, emotions, and unpredictability. The Vark had become trapped in their own calculations. Kavor knew something was wrong. His fleet was breaking apart, their ships losing their coordinated precision, their commanders unable to follow through with their orders. The heart of the Vark invasion was crumbling, piece by piece, and it was all because of one thing. Humanity had laughed its way into the galaxy's future. Voss watched as the Vark flagship began to lose power, its weapons failing, its systems faltering. She knew the victory was near, but she wasn't going to stop here. The U.S. Laughter wasn't just about winning. It was about showing the universe something important, that humanity could survive, could thrive, in the face of an overwhelming enemy. And the best weapon they had was not the cold steel of their ships, but the warmth of their spirit. "Jax," she said, "let's hit them with everything we've got. It's time for the final act." The U.S. Laughter was now at the center of the storm, its crew fully in control of the chaos they had created. The Federation fleet, bolstered by the unpredictable tactics and the power of human laughter, had turned the tide of battle. The Vark, who had once been so sure of their superiority, were now scrambling, unable to keep up with the madness unfolding around them. The Vark flagship, a once imposing fortress of cold precision, now felt like a floundering relic, its systems failing under the weight of the absurdity they had been forced to endure. Commander Voss stood tall on the bridge, her eyes gleaming with determination. The victory was almost theirs, but she knew that the final blow had to be delivered. This wasn't just about destroying the Vark. It was about showing the galaxy the true strength of humanity. They had proven that they could adapt, that they could fight with ingenuity, with spirit, and with humor. And now, they would finish what they started. "Lieutenant Jax," she said, her voice firm, "send the final broadcast. Let the Vark know what they've been up against." Jax nodded, his fingers flying across the comm panel. "Already done, Commander. Message is live." A wave of laughter erupted from the ship's speakers, but this time, it was different. It wasn't just the crew of the U.S. laughing. It was the entire Federation. The message had been sent to every ship, every colony, every outpost. The sound of laughter echoed across the stars, a symbol of defiance, of victory, of humanity's unbreakable spirit. Varkth Empire. The message rang out in a voice full of defiant joy. "This is the sound of our victory. This is what happens when you underestimate us. We will never be your slaves. We will never bow to your cold logic. We laugh in the face of your superiority. We laugh, and we win." The Vark flagship shook under the power of the broadcast, its systems glitching and sparking. On the command deck, Kivor's face was twisted in anguish. His empire, his people, had been bested by something they could never have predicted, something so simple, so human. "This is impossible," he muttered, clutching the armrests of his chair. We cannot lose to this." The U.S. laughter did not hesitate. With a final, dramatic barrel roll, it shot forward, its weapons firing in wild, unpredictable bursts that struck the Vark flagship with perfect chaos. The Vark flagship, its defenses already shattered, could not withstand the barrage. Its shields collapsed, and its power systems exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The mighty Vark flagship fell silent, drifting helplessly in space, a broken symbol of an empire undone by the unexpected power of human laughter. The rest of the Vark fleet, now leaderless and disoriented, faltered and began to retreat. Their once pristine formations dissolved into a chaotic mess, their systems failing one by one under the combined weight of the human unpredictability and the laughter that filled the void. The invasion, which had seemed unstoppable just days before, had come to an end. Voss took a deep breath, her shoulders finally relaxing as the magnitude of their victory began to sink in. The Federation had done the impossible, not with brute force, but with a force more powerful than any weapon: their ability to think differently, to laugh in the face of adversity, and to embrace the chaos of life. The crew erupted into cheers, their laughter once again filling the bridge. It was a sound of triumph, of joy, of a victory earned through ingenuity and spirit. Humanity had not just survived the Vark invasion, they had turned it into their own victory song. "Commander," Paddle said, grinning, "it's over. We've won." Voss smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "We've won, but more importantly, we've shown them something they'll never forget. We've shown them the true strength of humanity." And with that, the U.S. laughter sailed away from the shattered Vark fleet, a beacon of human resilience in the vast expanse of space. The laughter that had once been a symbol of their strange and unpredictable tactics now became a symbol of hope, of freedom, and of the victory of the human spirit.